There we go. Hi, Kendee.
Hi, Mary.
This is Kendee, and I'm Mary. And this is Autism and Angels, and we're winging this. So we need your support, your feedback. However, this is Angels and Autism, and Kendee here. I'm going to have her tell her story, but she has been working with her son, Kenny, who is autistic. And go ahead, Kendee, tell them your story, a little bit about you.
Well, I guess Mary and I kind of felt called to do this, so we're not really sure what it's going to entail, but my son, Ken, is 39, and he was born completely normal with a 10/10 APGAR score. And when he had his first series of vaccines, he had a very serious reaction and was hospitalized for 4 days. And we felt there was a connection to the vaccine, but the physicians at the time didn't acknowledge that connection. So we got a second opinion at Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh, and they also felt it was not connected to the vaccines. And the reason we did that is because we didn't want to get him a second one if it was affecting him.
So do you said that the doctors at Pittsburgh Children's Hospital did find?
No, they felt there was no connection.
Oh, no connection.
No connection to his hospitalization right after the vaccine. So they said, go ahead and get the next series. It had nothing to do with that. So we got the second series of vaccines. By that time, he was 5 months old because we held off a bit because we were scared. This was clear back in the 80s. So there was no internet. There was no people saying, there wasn't such a thing as anti-vaxxers back then. I mean, this was many years ago. But then he had the second set of shots, and he had what they called a shock collapse episode, where he turned blue around the mouth and white and fell over, and then he started having multiple seizures. And
then did they correlate his condition with the vaccines?
Not the pediatrician.
Okay.
But we were referred to a neurologist because his seizures were, they couldn't stop him. He was having multiple seizures daily, and many. And so we were referred to a neurologist who heard the story and said he was damaged by the vaccine. Because it had happened within, 2 hours of him getting the vaccine. So, that at that point, he also lost the ability to hold his head up. He had been, at 5 months, how if you spread their legs, they'll kind of sit up and wobble around a little bit. That was gone. I mean, he had no muscle tone, no trunk strength. He regressed a lot. And he continued to have multiple seizures for, I would say, about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, in spite of 2 to 3, usually 3 anticonvulsants he was on at a time, and was still having, sometimes depending upon what type of seizures, when he was having drop attacks, he would have as many as 20 to 100 a day.
Now, I'm sorry to get ahead of myself, but so at some point you had gone to court, and there's some sort of table that could you go explain that?
Well, and the sad part is people don't know about it. But I think it was the neurologist at the time said to us, he is definitely vaccine injured. You need to find an attorney because there is a program in the government that compensates. They call it compensates these children who are, who are injured from vaccines. So I called a local attorney who referred me to an attorney in Boston. And it was a firm, and because there's specific attorneys that file these claims for vaccine injury. And he heard Ken's case and said, he definitely falls. There's a table, and it's online.
What's the name of the table?
The National Vaccine Injury Table. And it's the table, and I'm sure they've updated over the years, but I just looked at it the other day. But even back then, they had this table, and according to this table, whether you had a case or not, whether the symptoms that your child had were covered under a specific vaccine. So his fell right within that time frame, because certain things had to happen within 72 hours. And so at any rate, once they, heard his story, they're like, oh, he definitely falls in the vaccine injury table. So we will file a case for him with the Department of Health and Human Services, because that's who is providing this compensation. So we did, and it took, I think, about 5 years to get through the system. We had to have a court hearing and present evidence, and we had witnesses, just like a regular court hearing. But it was with a special masters from the Department of Health and Human Services. And it was ruled that he was, in fact, vaccine injured. And then they begin to try to figure out how much money they're going to compensate that individual. And they do that by looking at their current level of functioning and trying to predict over a lifetime what needs they might have. I think in most cases they're grossly underestimated, at least in ours it was. But at any rate, the system does exist, and people don't know that it exists. And most people don't make the correlation to the vaccine to begin with.
They refuse to, many people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, people don't want to believe that it's true. And what's that Mark Twain thing? It's easier to fool the people than it is to convince the people that they've been fooled.
Very nice, yeah.
I mean, people don't want to believe that this has been happening and to children for many, many years. And I'm not saying that vaccines are bad or good. I'm not saying anything. But we can't put our head in the sand and pretend like some children aren't being brain injured, or, and in the table, it doesn't state that that autism is a covered injury from the vaccines, but autism is just a group of symptoms. There is no test, so to speak, blood test you do that determines that you have autism.
Right.
So you have a group of symptoms. In the vaccine injury table, they cover encephalitis and encephalopathy, which most people don't even know what that means, but that is dysfunction or swelling of the brain. And if you do 5 minutes of research on Google, you'll find that quite frequently, according to very reputable sources, such as this, Society for Autism and such, they believe that it's been proven that encephalitis frequently leads to autism. So, which makes sense, because autism is a neurological condition. And if you have brain swelling, which is encephalitis, which is covered under the table, but because they don't use the name that people are familiar with, people don't make the connection.
And then they just they just go right past it.
Yes.
So, Kendee, you're a wealth of information. And I have a lot of people that contact me, and two ladies in particular. And I feel that having interaction with a mom that has been dealing with this for 39 years.
Yeah, 39 years, yes.
You've, one of her stories, and we're going to have other videos. So please, Angels and Autism, connect, leave your questions. If Kendee or I can't answer them, and really she is your wealth of information here, we will try to get the answer for you. But you and your family, you said at one point you were searching and searching to help your son, and you guys would change your diet. You went to another state in Oklahoma for almost 2 months. Did you say that? It was an extended amount of time.
It was 4 weeks. They only accepted, it was either 5 or 6 patients at a time, and minimum stay was 4 weeks. And it was an outpatient clinic, so you had to be there all day, but you had to find your own place to sleep and such.
So it really cost.
Right, and we were really poor. We were.
It really cost, and she was really poor. But because she was a mom of an autistic child, she somehow found her way to Oklahoma from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
We drove all the way across the United States and stayed in the crappiest hotel. I've never stayed in one so crappy, but it was all we could afford.
Right.
I mean, since then, I haven't. But
And you've done diets. You've done everything.
Yes.
I mean, everything that you could possibly do. And there are some modalities of healing that actually worked for you. And that is, well, I want you to tell them, please. Tell them your story. What worked with Kendee?
Well, I think most significant for Ken then, and there's been different challenges throughout the years where other things have been more significant in helping him overcome.
Okay,
you
right.
know.
So there's various.
But at the time, our biggest challenge was his seizures.
Okay.
And he spent 3 weeks in Cincinnati Children's Hospital, 3 weeks straight on his 3rd birthday, trying to get his seizures under control. So that was his most significant problem at the time, because if anyone has that particular issue, I mean, development is the behavior, it affects everything because it affects the brain,
Yes.
But we took him to a clinic in Oklahoma, and it was a holistic, would that be the right word? A holistic clinic. We didn't have the internet back then, but I would go to the Cincinnati library and I would read all I could read, try to figure out how I could help him, because we'd been to top neurologists all over the place. And I would go to the health food store, and they had a selection of books. Well, at one point I was reading about this doctor in Oklahoma who had stopped he had a patient from, I think it was Australia, that came, because people came here from all over the world to this clinic, and he stopped her seizures. And I was like, I gotta call this guy. So I called him, and he felt that he could help Ken. So we decided we were going to Oklahoma for a month, and fortunately, my husband, they gave him, they let him work out there. He fixed microscopes for universities, and they said, well, we'll put you on the field out there. So we drove across the United States. We didn't even pay our rent that month, because if we paid the rent, we couldn't have afforded to go. So we thought, well, we might get back and have no house. But it was. I mean, he was having 80 to 100 seizures a day at that time.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
it was
priorities.
Priorities. Right. So we went to this. It was so funny. We drove across the United States, and I mean, this is a long, long drive.
Right.
And we get there, and we didn't have GPS back then. You had maps. Right?
Yes. Yes. Oh
so
my
we
God.
had the.
Were
the
you guys
atlas.
still married when you got there?
Yeah. Right. I know. It was quite the journey, And at the time, Ken also had this problem where he threw up many times a day. He had this problem where he threw up many times a day. So anyway, so we drove across the United States, and we kept a bucket because he would throw up, maybe 10 times a day. It was not unusual. Yeah. So we get all the way across the United States. We have the atlas, and we pull in and this address, and there's this huge farmhouse, and there's like chickens, and there's like goats. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I made a really big mistake.
Were you in Oklahoma?
Well, that's when we got to the clinic.
Oh.
We pulled in, and it was this huge farmhouse with.
Oh, that was the clinic.
That was the clinic. Yeah. Imagine my surprise. Imagine my husband's surprise. He was not happy. He expected to be a medical clinic, a huge medical clinic. It was called a medical center, But at any rate, to make a long story short, the guy did stop his seizures in 3 days. Unbelievable. It was the most miraculous thing I'd ever seen in my whole life. So yeah, he stopped his seizures.
See, you
in 3
can't
days.
judge a book by its cover, right?
Right?
God bless, right?
Yeah. I remember telling the neurologist, who was from Cincinnati Children's, he was the head of neurology there, that we were going, and he said something to the effect of, hey, if someone told me that if he hung upside down by his toenails in the backyard and it might stop the seizures, I'd try it. So he's like,
He supported you.
He supported it. He's like,
Nice.
they didn't know what else to do.
Right.
You can't.
And this was your neurologist.
That was the neurologist.
Nice. Isn't that nice to have that kind of support?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, he was
nice.
He was amazing.
Did you get to tell him that Kenny's seizures stopped after 3 days?
Yeah, because we come back and he was still a neurologist.
And go ahead, the reaction of the...
I can't remember. So much happened at that time. I just know then, that was kind of like when he quit seizing. Now, he did go on to have a different type of seizure that was not nearly as detrimental. The drop attacks were terrible. But we slowly started discontinuing his anticonvulsants then, because obviously those affect development as well.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so there were lots of different things. We did do a lot with his diet and, the rotation diet and taking out wheat and milk and eggs and all of that stuff. Now, I think each person, I want to say child, but even us as individuals, we're all different. And what works for one isn't necessarily the magic thing for another. And I think sometimes, I wish someone would have told me years ago as a mother, like you have that energetic connection to your child. And if you trusted that, that's your answers right there. I mean, if I trusted that, my child wouldn't have had a second vaccine. Later, when we went to hearing, it was determined that he had a temporary encephalopathy or swelling of the brain from the first vaccine. It was the second vaccine that caused permanent brain injury. So if I would, just to trust your gut and your own inner knowing of what your child needs or what might work for them. I think
A mother's
important.
intuition.
Right? Yeah.
Now you really do trust that. You're so good with Kenny's caregivers. Intuitively, oftentimes you're good with that, Kenny.
Well,
Kendee.
thanks, Mary. We have some really great people working with Kendee.
You said that. And it was a concern. It wasn't.
Yes.
I've been on this journey with Kendee for about 10, 12, 15 years. I don't know when we met.
Maybe 15,
But But we're going to be back. So if any of you have questions for Kendee, and here is one of the questions that I would like to cover. A woman had contacted me 2 weeks ago, and she has a 5-year-old girl who is still wearing diapers, and she's really struggling with potty training and giving up hope. She's struggling with her hope. The mother is struggling with giving up hope. What do you have to say to a young mother like that?
I'm hoping, Mary, that, and I don't know how this YouTube thing works. Mary's the pro on that, but I wish that there was some way we could do it like live so people could ask questions, but I don't know.
We can. You know what? Right now, the only people that are watching this is us.
Okay.
But once we get a following to Angels and Autism,
you could do that.
We could tell them, look, we're going to do a live on a Sunday afternoon. We'll even do a poll. What works best for them?
That would be really cool.
Is it a Friday night, a Sunday afternoon? And Kendee and I will make it work so we can do a live.
Okay, awesome.
Right.
So in answer to your question,
hope,
struggling with hope, I think that whole thing is such a journey because as you journey with your child, you also will grow emotionally as well. And, I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves, like, how important is it? Like, because we're all trying to be normal. We want our child to be normal.
Right.
Is normal great? I mean, I'm 39. Well, I'm 39 years down the road. So,
I don't know if I'm normal, so I can't answer that.
But what I realized is my child, he may not, be able to do math or, write. Although he's doing a lot of good things in his, learning to write and read with certain words. But in terms of fruits of the spirit,
oh yeah,
Ken has my son Ken has more fruits of the Spirit than any person I think that I know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He is, kind and loving and help me out, Mary. What are the other fruits of the Spirit? He's honest.
Yeah, but you're like that, giving.
Yeah, I guess.
You're like that, and so is Brody.
Yeah,
Very
Brady.
giving.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very giving, honest, good people. Kenny, the fruit did not fall far from the tree here.
Aw,
He is a
thanks.
very nice, and that doesn't mean he doesn't have his tantrums, and we'll cover that too,
Yes.
maybe on live. I've seen my granddaughter handle her daughter, who is autistic. And when she goes to have a meltdown, if she just goes and she kind of massages her,
yeah.
and she gives her a nice little massage,
It's
it
a
kind of,
proprioceptive.
yeah, it kind of just,
Yeah.
distracts her and it calms her down. But so we need to get a following
Yeah,
to do a live.
that would be
So
amazing.
for those of you, and look, for those of you that we are new to this, so we are open to any suggestions, and keep the comments clean. We're looking to grow this channel, and our intention is just to shed light and love to the autistic families, the whole family, because autism affects the whole family, as we both know that.
Absolutely.
And anything else, Kendee, that we would, hey, look, I'm so sorry I keep running my mouth.
No, you're
But
great.
Kendee has had so much experience that during this first video, I want to keep rambling on and wanting to say, tell this story. But you know what? We'll just do this as it comes. And I
Yeah.
think the first show with you saying about how this all occurred and some of the changes and the feelings that you've gone through.
Yeah.
And Kendee is strongly intuitive herself, and her cord with her son Kenny is she's on it. She could feel what he's feeling oftentimes. So any questions, please like, share, subscribe, help us to get this channel to grow. And Kendee, any closing comments here?
Not really. I just I would like to see us work together. It would be awesome if we could kind of get a little community of people that could help each other and encourage one another and understand the struggles, and try to overcome the emotional challenges even of being a parent of a child with autism.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Kendee, you've been down the road from birth to Kenny is 39 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And you've even concerned yourself with what is going to happen to your son when you cross over.
Yes.
And we're going to leave these folks in suspense so they tune in to the next time.
Yes,
Because you've got that covered now. Remember?
Yes.
That was a big concern, as it would be
was.
for anyone.
Absolutely.
Right? And now look where you're at. God bless you guys for that. So I'm going to sign off now. Go ahead, Kendee. You could say your farewells, and we will do this
That's
again.
it. Thank you all for
next
listening,
week.
and I hope that we hear from some people and we could work together and see what we come up with. It's amazing.
God bless you guys. And remember, the angels are with us all.
Always. Yes.
God bless.